Wow, that song really touched me. You probably remember that song is from the play and the movie Godspell. Godspell. Jesus Christ Superstar. I'm thinking of Godspell because I'm going to talk about the gospel today. But Jesus, thank you. You all know the movie Jesus Christ Superstar. I love that song. And the first song that Millie sang, and I don't think she knew my mother's name is Mary. And so I'm dedicating this service to my mother, who's 97. Would love to be here today. I'm honored that my cousin is here today from San Francisco. He called me 3 weeks ago, and Paul said, I'm going to come to your church. He's never been to Unity before. So Paul, stand up. Thank you, Paul. He was in Bible class with me, too, this morning, and it was quite an experience. Thank you, Paul. Paul. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. My mother is the last of her siblings, so Paul is the oldest son of her baby brother. So it's just a blessing to have you here. And they had a wonderful visit yesterday, and it was like listening to Old Home Week when he talks about our grandfather and some of the things that we grew up with and were taught. Some of you received tassels. Is there anybody who, did all of you get a tassel? I don't know that the choir did, but maybe after if we have some more. I want to tell you the story about these tassels first. Why do you have a tassel? You're sitting there swinging them and going, hey, this is kind of fun, right? Like those little widgets that they play with now. You can do it that way. You can use it as a widget. But the main reason is because I'm going to talk to you today about faith. And I'm going to talk to you about 4 women. This is Women's History Month. So I want to talk to you about 4 women who were women of faith. One of them, my mother, you've heard me talk about before. One over 2,000 years ago. One probably over 60 or 80 years ago. And one today who many of you know. I'm going to start off with talking to you about the tassel a little bit. See, when the Old Testament, the early Jews were required to wear a garment that was called a prayer shawl. And that outer garment or cloak had 4 corners, and each corner had a tassel. And the tassel represented the love and reverence to God, the power of God. So I'm going to talk to you today about a woman who had a belief that if she could just touch the hem of God's garment, she would be healed. But before I do, since this is Women's History Month, I thought I'd start off with a little something you might enjoy. Adam was walking around the Garden of Eden, looking really sad and lonely. And so God said, what's wrong? He said, well, I'm lonely. I want someone to talk to. And so God said, you know what? I'm going to make you a woman. Now, she will be your right arm. She will do anything you ask. She will be at your beck and call. She will agree with everything you say. She will bear your children. She will never ask you to get up in the middle of the night to give the baby a bottle or change the diaper. She will be the first to admit when she was wrong, even when she knew she was right. She will never have a headache. And she will freely love you with all the passion that she can muster. So Adam says, God, how much will this woman cost? He said, an arm and a leg. Adam thought about it for a minute and said, how much can I get for a rib? And the rest is history. So I want to talk to you about some of these women who hold the power in our lives. This woman had been bleeding for 12 years. And according to the old Jewish purity laws, when a woman was bleeding, after 7 days, when the bleeding stopped, she was then considered clean again. But otherwise, she was unclean, untouchable. She was not welcome anywhere. Anything she sat on or touched, anyone she got close to would be unclean. Jewish law. But this woman had a powerful imagination. And she believed that if she could just get close enough to the Messiah, if she just touched the hem of his garment, she would be healed. Now, she couldn't tell anybody because they certainly would have stopped her and probably thrown her in jail or stoned her to death for just having the thought that she was good enough to even go near the Messiah, much less anybody else. Now imagine 30 years bleeding, tired, anemic, distraught. She'd been to doctors. Even the great Dr. Luke, dear and glorious physician, had given up hope. She'd spent every penny she had on treatments that did not work. And now, with no other hope, she had this idea that if she could just get close enough. She had heard that Jesus had just healed a paralytic, and he was going to be 30 miles away. She couldn't ride on anybody's donkey or camel. Nobody would help her get there. But she made it up in her mind, and on faith, she stepped out and started the journey. Imagine 30 miles on foot. You're tired. You're weak. And you don't really even know if you'll get the chance to get that close, but you have faith enough to believe that if you just try, you can get there. So she makes it. Thousands of people are crowded around Jesus. He was like a rock star, Jesus Christ superstar. And there was no way for her to get close, but she was determined, using all the strength she had left, her courage, her faith, her imagination. She managed to crawl between the people, hoping not to be seen or recognized. And when she became close enough, she reached up and she touched the tassel of his garment. At that moment, Jesus said, "Who touched me?" And of course, his disciples said, "What do you mean, who touched you? Do you see all these people here? Everybody is touching you." "What do you mean, who touched you?" No, this was different. Somebody touched me. Jesus looked down, and the woman stood up at his feet and said, "Master, I'm sorry, but you're my only hope. You see, I have this bleeding condition, and nobody's been able to help me. And I thought that if I could just touch the hem of your garment, that I would be healed." He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." Did the tassel heal her? Did the hem of the garment heal her? Did Jesus heal her? Her faith healed her. A more modern example is the co-founder of Unity, Myrtle Fillmore, who was diagnosed with terminal tuberculosis in her early 40s, attended a seminar at the behest of a friend when Myrtle had given up all hope because all of her life she had been told that she was a sickly child and that if anybody was going to get something, it was going to be Myrtle. So she had bought into that in her consciousness. I'm always sick. I'm always going to be sick. Obviously, I'm going to die of tuberculosis. But when she heard Reverend E.B. Weeks say these words, it was like touching the hem of the garment. "I am a child of God. Therefore, I do not inherit sickness. I am a child of God. Therefore, I do not inherit sickness." It was Myrtle's faith that healed her. And for the next 40 years, she set about helping to start this movement we call Unity, to teach other people that you have the power within you to change your life. You have everlasting life within you. It's not there or here. Lo, it is in you, Jesus said. My mother, and Paul remembers this better than I do because when we moved in with my Uncle Charlie and Aunt Medessa, his mom and dad, he was about 9. And Charles, his brother, was about 5. I was an infant when my mother had a nervous breakdown. And she was here in a hospital in Kansas City, and she could not walk or talk. You see, my mother also suffered from epilepsy, so about the same time she had an epileptic seizure. The doctors told her that it was going to take a long time for her to be healed, to be able to speak. And then one day, she felt her bed shake. She felt the room move. She was in a private room, and there was nobody. The nurse wasn't in there. And tears began to stream down her cheeks because she was so scared that something was happening, and she couldn't move. She tried to reach for the button to summon the nurse, but her hand was too shaky. Suddenly, as if by magic, the door to her hospital room opened, and in walks my grandfather from Arkansas, all the way from southern Arkansas. She didn't know her dad had come. And he couldn't make out a word that she was trying to say. There was one nurse who could lean up close enough to hear my mother's stammering voice. He got the nurse, and she came and listened, and my mother said, "I'm scared. Something shook my bed." My grandfather, one of the wisest people I know or have ever known, said to her, "Baby, that was the hand of God that shook your bed, and you're going to be all right." She has told me that story so many times that it has influenced my belief that faith can move mountains. Scripture says if you have just enough faith the size of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. What is the mountain? It's whatever is standing in your way of being the whole and perfect child that you were brought in this world to be. You are a child of God, therefore you do not inherit sickness or disease in mind, body, or spirit. I'm known around here for people coming to me saying, "Oh, I've got a cold. Don't touch me." And what do I say? I can touch you all day long because I'm not going to get your cold. And I don't. And I still hug them. Now, that's not to say I will never get a cold, but what I'm trying to get to you is that consciousness. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. Seek a higher consciousness. The woman that I know, most of you know, who sings in our choir, is a walking demonstration of faith, and that is Erin Keller. Erin Keller was given up by the doctors here. There was nothing more they could do. She'd come through colon cancer, 37 years old. Cancer's in remission. She had had a colostomy bag. Something was leaking in her body. Her body was filling up with fluid. She drove herself to the hospital on December 1st and stayed there for 30 days with no one being able to tell her what was wrong or how to fix it. Eventually, the doctors here got together with some specialists in St. Louis, and she's in St. Louis. I don't know if she's still there, Steve. She's at Barner Jewish Hospital, and they found an abscess that never showed up on any of the scans and tests that she's had. She's had one surgery that was supposed to last an hour and a half, lasted 4 hours. She's gotten down to 100 pounds. She's 6'1". She's going to come back home, gain about 30, 40 pounds, and then go back for the main surgery to correct the problem. Erin Keller has never lost her faith. Many of us have visited with Erin, and she has never lost her faith. And we've never lost our faith. Everyone in here who knows Erin has been lifting her up. Scripture said, "If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me." And what does that mean? I will draw all good unto me. I will draw all good into your life. An ironic thing happened to me as I was planning this lesson today, taken from the 3 synoptic gospels. Synoptic meaning they all are similar. They're written in the same context. Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John, written in a different context. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all 3 recount the story of the bleeding woman and how she was healed. Before I tell you what happened to me yesterday, I want to tell you this about this bleeding woman. 12 years she bled. 12 is significant. 12 disciples, 12 powers, 12 months, 12 stones in the crown, just 12 years. And Jairus had laid down on the ground begging Jesus, please, come on. My daughter's dying. Come on. She's 12 years old. I know you can save her. Come on. But the woman had distracted Jesus. Jesus didn't say anything to the woman like he did in many of the miracles. Get up, rise up, take up your bed and walk, that kind of thing. She spoke to him first, and he said, daughter, your faith has healed you. But Jairus wanted him to come and lay hands on his dying 12-year-old daughter. So when Jesus finally got there, after the woman was healed of her bleeding, and by the way, the scripture says she was healed instantly the minute she touched that tassel. The bleeding stopped. But when he finally got to Jairus' daughter, she had already passed away. Jesus, knowing this, sent everybody out of the room and said to her, daughter, rise up. Rise up. And the story is that he saved her from the dead. Now, many of us know that these are stories, and the Bible is written in metaphors, not literally. But each story has a relationship to our life and how we live our lives every day. Each story has faith built into it. So if you read it not from the literal perspective, but from what can this teach me about how to live my life, you can get a lot more out of it. So I was agonizing over this. Had a little incident this week that made me feel a little invisible. And I was thinking about the invisible man. Do you remember that? In the 1930s, H.G. Wells wrote the book, and then in 1975, the TV show came out. It lasted for about a year, The Invisible Man. He made up a formula, it was supposed to be for warfare, that would make him invisible, and then he couldn't figure out how to get back visible again. The book was serious, but the TV show was a comedy. I watched it all the time. It was fun. It was a black and white TV show. So I thought about the invisible woman. How many women are often invisible? They're the ones behind the scenes. They're the ones carrying the water. They're the ones doing the work. And I thought about these women in the stories that I've just told and how invisible they might have felt until they touched the hem and realized who they really are. And so here I was agonizing over this story, and I called Silent Unity, which I always do, 1-800-NOW-PRAY. I encourage you to do that. I called Silent Unity, and I asked for prayer that I will say the right things, because my printer quit working, and you all know I like to have a whole lot of notes up here. And I've been working on it and telling Duke, one day I'm going to not have any notes. He says, you can do that. Well, so God heard him and made my printer quit. So that's how it happens. So I tell this prayer associate, a male at Silent Unity, that I want to be able to get up and give this message on faith. And you know what he did? He read the prayer of faith. On Wednesday, when I sent my information in for the bulletin to Sharon, that's what I told her to put on the bulletin. He had no idea. Isn't that how God works? When we are following the right direction, when we are going after that dream, when we have the courage and the faith and the strength to follow whatever that guidance is, we always get pointed in the right direction. So it's a joy for me to come here today to bring you this message of faith. In addition to the prayer of faith, on the front of the bulletin, I put the quote by Myrtle Fillmore, including the second quote. Keep on praying for faith, because it's through faith, through prayer, that you develop all your wonderful soul qualities. And then in Matthew 18:19, if two of you agree on earth as touching, like touching the hem, anything that you ask, it will be done for you. We practice that in unity, as Myrtle Fillmore taught, by going into the silence. That's where we touch the hem of his garment. So I invite you now to go into the silence, and whatever you take with you that may be troubling you, know this in your heart. Whatever it is, your faith has healed you. Go in peace.
and the silence.